Hey guys, good morning. I hope your day's starting off as fantastic as it can. I'm going to play a clip here of the President of the United States. He did an interview with someone named Glenn Beck. I don't know who that is, but a little bit 2 minute portion of the interview, just because I think it's a perfect way to explain and talk about tariffs, okay? Now, this is an answer to one of the questions he was asked, and it doesn't even matter what the question was. Okay, let's just listen to this and then we'll talk about it.
So we're this giant store that people want to come in and buy from. We're the United States. We have the richest consumer, et cetera, right? But we're not going to be that way for long if we don't do something. But we're this giant store, and they all want to come in and they want to take our product. But to take our product, they're going to have to pay. And we'll either make a deal with them or we'll just set a price, because some countries are worse than others. Some countries have ripped us off really badly, and some countries have just ripped us off a little bit. But almost all of them have ripped us off because we've had really poor leadership. And what's going to happen is we're going to negotiate with, we are negotiating. We're negotiating with 70 different countries. And we're negotiating, we're showing great respect. But in the end, we may make deals, but either that or I just set a price. I said, here's what you're going to pay for the privilege of servicing the United States of America. And they have an option. They can maybe talk to me a little bit, or they can not shop. You know, they don't have to shop at this big store, or they can shop.
Right.
But in any event, they're going to have to pay. Look, we owe $36 trillion for a reason. The reason is the trade, and also the endless wars, the stupid wars.
Well, okay, I stopped it there because he starts rambling off topic, but he starts to pose an analogy saying, the United States, we're this big store, and people want to shop here, and if they want to shop here, they're going to have to pay. The United States is not the big store, okay? China's the big store. China's the big store that everyone wants to shop from. The United States is the big shopper. Okay, the United States is the consumer, the shopper, and China is the big store. And well, Mexico's a pretty big store, and Canada's a little bit of a store, and Europe is a decent sized store. The U.S. shops, the U.S. buys, the U.S. buys more than it sells. That's how this whole thing started. At least that's how it was explained by the president in the first place. And if you remember, this is the key thing. And we've switched here now to the Government of the United States Census web page, where they publish trade statistics. And I'm zoomed in here on 2024, the U.S. trade in goods with China. And the whole point of these tariffs was because of these numbers. This chart summarizes trade with China in 2024. And the column here right above my head is imports. The U.S. imported $438.9 billion. That's the number right below me here. And it exported to China, and that's the number right there. They exported to China $143.5 billion, which resulted in that number down there, a trade imbalance, a negative number of minus $295 billion with China, meaning the U.S. buys $295 billion more from China than it sells to China. And this was the whole point. The United States has a negative trade balance with almost every country in the world. It has a trade imbalance with Canada. I think with Canada, that number is minus 60 or minus 80 billion. Let's check. There you go. This is the U.S. trade in goods with Canada. And the whole point, again, if you look at the numbers there, under imports, which is this column here, the U.S. imports $412.6 billion with a B worth of stuff from Canada, and it exports to Canada, this column over here, $349.3 billion, which results in a trade imbalance of $63 billion, which is a negative. Means U.S. buys more from Canada than Canada buys from the U.S. And this is consistent with all countries. And I thought this was the whole point of the tariffs, because there's this big trade imbalance with the world. But it's reversed to what he just said. The U.S. is not the store. The U.S. is the shopper. The U.S. consumers are the ones that buy everything from the world, and the world doesn't buy as much from the U.S. That's the imbalance. So what he's saying is backwards. Let's listen to it again.
So we're this giant store that people want to come in and buy from. We're the United States. We have the richest consumer, et cetera, right?
We have the richest consumer, et cetera, et cetera. Yes, you have the richest consumer. You're not the store. You're the shopper. So he kind of said both sides there.
But we're this giant store, and they all want to come in and they want to take our product.
No, they don't all want to come in and take your product. That's the problem. It's reverse. Everyone wants to sell stuff to the United States, and they're not buying as much. For instance, Mexico. Here's the chart with Mexico. The United States has a huge trade imbalance with Mexico, minus 171.8 billion. That's the number down there, meaning the U.S. buys 171 billion more from Mexico than Mexico buys from the US. The Mexicans are not coming to shop at the US store. As a matter of fact, I have a pretty good feeling about this because I just went on vacation in Mexico. I was just down there in Cancun and Cozumel, and I did a few excursions where I went into the towns and mingled with the Mexicans. And I'll tell you something. There's a lot of poverty in Mexico. The people are just struggling to get by. You walk off the beaten path a little bit in Cozumel and Cancun, and you're in some fairly poor areas. It's not like walking down the strip in Las Vegas, okay? They're not clamoring to shop at the U.S. store. What they're trying to do is sell avocados to the U.S. and sell papayas to the U.S. and hope that people come there on vacation just to get by. And that's why there's a trade deficit between the United States and Mexico, because Mexico is poor and it doesn't import a lot of things from the United States. And the United States is rich, and the consumers have a lot of money and they consume more, and they buy lots of things from Mexico because per capita an American is much wealthier than a Mexican. Okay, so these trade imbalances, these negative numbers, I've always said, are really not a big deal. They're just an indication of how wealthy the U.S. is compared to the rest of the world. So it's not even an issue to start off with, but it was used as kind of the focal point to launch this whole tariff war. The fact that the United States has a trade imbalance with pretty much the whole world, and it's a negative number, meaning the U.S. buys more from the whole world than the world buys from the U.S. And here's the president saying, well, they all want to shop at the U.S. store. It's backwards.
They all want to come in and they want to take our product. But to take our product, they're going to have to pay. And we'll either make a deal with them or we'll just set a price because some consumer, et cetera, right?
So they want to buy our product. And if they want to buy our product, we're going to make them pay? Like Mexicans want to buy your product? And if they want to buy your product, you're going to make them pay? Mexicans want to sell Americans avocados. That's what they don't want to buy your product. He's literally speaking in reverse. He's got it backwards. And when he says we're going to make them pay, he's talking about tariffs. And of course, tariffs are a tax on imports. Tariff is a word that is used to describe a tax on imports. So if he puts tariffs on all goods from Mexico, including avocados, when a retailer from the United States wants to buy a shipment of avocados from Mexico and they arrive in the United States, that retailer has to pay a tax, a tariff, and it pays that tariff to the United States government. And guess what? When they sell the avocados at the store, they're going to increase the price because they've had to pay a tariff. So when he says we're going to make them pay, he's talking about he's going to make Americans pay. He's speaking in reverse. America is not the big store. America is the big shopper. China is the big store. Mexico's the big store. Canada's the big store. Europe's the big store. With respect to the U.S., the whole world is the big store. The U.S. is buying everything from all over the world because they're the biggest consumer. And he's speaking in reverse.
And they have an option. They can maybe talk to me a little bit, or they can not shop. You know, they don't have to shop at this big store.
And they're going to have to pay if they want to shop at this big store. Now, guys, this is a perfect example of reverse doublespeak because the United States isn't the big store. It's reverse. The United States wants to shop at the big store of the world, and the United States is going to put a price on that shopping in the form of tariffs, and Americans are going to pay that tariff for the privilege of shopping in the big store of the world. It's mind-boggling, and I want to ask you a couple of questions. Hopefully, just listening to this maybe made you think about what actually tariffs are. Maybe you understand that now. But my other question is, again, this is a serious question, okay? This is a serious question. Do you believe that the president knows what he's talking about? And think about that before you're answering it, because I don't mean that in an insulting way. I'm saying, do you believe that he actually knows how tariffs work and he knows what I'm saying, but he's speaking in reverse to garner more support? Or Do you believe that he doesn't know and that he's just making it up? And I don't know the answer to that question. Leave your answer to that question in the comment section here, because it's we live in strange times where someone's words and how they speak, if they sound strong or if they say it with confidence, people will believe it, or there's an alternate reality that no one can understand. We live in a mysterious alternate universe. I just want to go back here to this chart, because in the president's analogy that he used, the correct analogy would be China is the big store. All right, China is the big store. We buy 295.4 billion. Do I get it right? No, that number down there. We buy 295.4 billion from that big store, and they buy 143.5 billion. That number right there. We buy more from their big store, and if we put tariffs on the stuff we buy from their big store, everything's going to cost more in the United States of America. And in fact, I'll close with this, because I've been reading some other articles, and this video is getting too long, so I'm not going to include the information here. But some of the major retailers in the United States, Walmart and some of the big box stores that buy a lot of things from China, like toys, 80% of toys come from China. And as I recorded this video, I believe the tariffs on China right now are 145% or some very high number. And what the big box stores have done now is they've stopped ordering stuff from China. They're not buying stuff, and they're burning through the inventory that they have, that they purchased or imported from China before the tariffs. And now the inventory is starting to dwindle. Let's say one of the things they sell is a certain toy, and that toy is made in China, and they're running out of them now. The inventory is getting low. They're reluctant to put in an order for another million of whatever that toy is, because they know if they do that and they take possession of it now, they're going to have to pay 145% tariff when they import it, which means they'll have to raise the price to sell it to Americans. They don't want to do that. They're holding off. The other thing is they think, well, if we put in an order for 1 million of those toys and we pay 145% tariff now on it, if they're importing it for $10 and they have to pay 145% tariff, they have to pay $14.50 tax to the government of the United States. They have to raise the price to make a profit on that. Well, they're also saying, well, we don't want to do that. We don't want to order the stuff now, because the U.S. administration could change their mind next week. They could drop the tariff to 20%. They could just eliminate the tariff. From one day to another, they might change their mind. And we don't want to be the chumps that put in the big order and pay the 145% tariff a few days before Donald Trump changes his mind and changes the numbers. So imports from China have ground to a halt. And there's worry that when these large stores run out of inventory on some products that they get from China, the shelves will be empty. Because they know Americans aren't going to pay 145% more for some stupid little toy. They won't be able to sell them. So what's going to happen in the future? Well, the prediction is that there's going to be some movement on these tariffs. And it's going to be very interesting to see how the president explains the change. I think you'll see in the near future that 145% tariff, it might change magically. It might be, we've done a really good deal with China. We've forced them to respect us, and they're not going to rip us off as much anymore. And we're lowering the tariff to 15% or 20% or something, right? There'll be some story of how the United States is victorious now. We won, and the tariff will come down, or something crazy. I don't know, right? Who knows what's going to happen? Leave your comments. Let me know what you think is going to happen. But this can't be sustained. I'm really interested in your comments on how this all ties in, that what started off as a response to a trade imbalance with the rest of the world, a trade deficit with most countries in the world, imposing tariffs because of that. And now the president's saying that the United States is the big store that everyone shops at. So, I don't know, guys. I thought it was interesting. Leave your comments. Subscribe to the channel if you're enjoying the content. And I will catch you guys on the next one.